mind me, Steve. Just making videos. I finished his book, so I gotta do a review of it. Atomic Habits. It's actually, you know what? If you got just a second, I'll tell you about it, and this will be the best review you've ever seen. You got just a second? Okay. Tell you about this book here. You got a seat. Nice set of Hooters we got there behind you. They're fake though. I wish they were real.
Remember Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah.
Nice Hooters.
Nice Hooters. Boom, and he pops that thing off. Okay, so I finished his book. Pretty interesting. I don't know what I think of it. I don't know if I like it or not. It's Atomic Habits by James Clear. He's got a lot of good references. He's like referenced Charlie Munger, Machiavelli. I didn't see any of Immanuel Kant, but like Friedrich Nietzsche, like a lot of psychologists. But it's based off of. It reminds me. I went to a Christmas party, and this doctor was there, and I'm talking to her, and she pauses me, and she runs and gets this book and comes back super enthusiastically and says, "You sound like you wrote this book." And I said, "Well, you know, like the Beatles said, you can't say anything that hasn't been said before, so if like the principles that you're getting off of sound the same as this." So I read this book, and basically, yeah, it's the same conversation, but a watered down version of it, and I like it. I think it's very good for setting habits, and it actually opened my eyes a lot. I think this would be a good. There's one idea that I think we should all do, and it's called the paperclip. So you get 2 glass jars, and you fill this glass jar with however many paper clips that you want. Let's say 10 paper clips, and at the end of each, so you make a phone call, and at the end of the phone call, you get to hit end, cell call, and you get to take 1 paper clip and you put it in the empty jar. And at the end of the day, now, so we set our goal, whatever we want. This guy made 120 calls a day, and he did it every single day, and he was a stockbroker for this firm, and then he went over to this firm here. All of a sudden, the firm was making $5 million a month, and he was making over 100 grand a year at like 24 years old, and then he's like some super famous dude, but this is what he was doing, just taking those little paper clips, and I'm like, okay, that's something we should do. We should get some mason jars and get some paper clips and move them over. In the last couple of days, I was thinking about how to hack your habits, and that's really what the book's about. I think you'd like it. But you have such good habits.
Oh, not as good as they should be, for sure.
Well, this opened my eye. It's not my book, and I beat it up a little, but I have the cover. So, and it's pretty interesting, but I'm going to print out the information in it, and then I'll make you a copy of it. And it's all these like habit trackers and stuff. It's interesting. So like what I mean is like you can't say anything that hasn't been said before. Here's the habit tracker, and literally on my printer is Ben Franklin's 13 virtues, list of virtues. This is what Ben Franklin carried with him as a young man. So like this is brought up in the book, and it's listed. Well, I already have this. I already do this. I already did this. Like I write everything down. It's literally like somebody took a watered down version of my life and put it in here. And at the beginning, I stayed up because I tried to be like Ben Franklin. So this doctor gives me this book, and what do? Before reading this book, I already know Ben Franklin. I asked Kelly, what would Ben Franklin do? Ben Franklin would stay up all night and read this book and return it to them. So I stayed up all night and I read this book, and the first notes in here, I took them all. These are all my notes right here, where I'm writing down what's interesting to me while I'm thinking about what's going on with this book, and then I start putting the time, and it goes until 3:30 a.m. Is when I passed out because my alarm went off at 3:50, and then I went to bed. When my alarm went off and I was supposed to get up, so I read all night, but I didn't get very far because I'm a slow reader, so I only got to page 91.
Okay.
I wanted to finish it, but I couldn't. I'm not as good as Ben Franklin, but it's interesting. They're bringing up all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm already living this, you know? And I like it though because it shines a light on what I'm already doing, and it helps me say, okay. I mean, I made a video today about me tracking stuff down because what gets tracked gets progressed upon. If you write something, and if you track like what you eat every day, you're gonna eat better just because you're writing it down. This is a super good. I mean, this basically this has been why I think it's like watered down kind of baby food is because the stuff that he's talking about, like, oh, here, print out my tracker and stuff like that. Well, I'm like, okay, so you took an idea of Ben Franklin's and then you watered it down to what it is today. And so he took all of these ideas. He's very versed, or he's read a lot, or been around a lot. But he took all of the same people that I talked about, all the same people that I've read, and I've already had this built as a foundation for so long that I don't even think twice about it. I don't even look back at the foundation. And it's a habit, you know, like it's left, it's automatic. You don't even look at it. What was interesting though, I did learn your habits, got a cap off. And it's interesting, habits stacking. But I'm like, I'm naturally doing this thing. And this is what it doesn't piss me off because I wasted so much time reading this book. And it's literally like, Marcus Aurelius says, at a certain point, you need to stop reading the books on how to be a good man and just be a good man. Like, you need to stop reading all these books. These aren't self-help books, these are self-hurt books. Because you can read 20 of them. But what you need to do is you have to read 20 of them. You have to get everyone else's perspective. But what I did was, you go to the source. You go to the root. Who did these guys read? What did they read? What did they know that I don't know? I don't want to quote from Charlie Munger. I need to read everything that Charlie Munger's ever wrote. And I've done it with most of the people in this book. So it's like, yeah, I'm having a conversation, but it's watered down. And two, the stuff it says is just straight self-hurt because this is watered down compared to Psycho-Cybernetics. If you read that book, it changes your life. That book completely changed my life. That mixed with a lot of other things, but I mean, you have to read these sort of things. Like these things, right? Right here, imitating the powerful. Humans everywhere pursue power, prestige, and status. So right there, as I read that, what is my mind, as those words go into your mind, what's that say? Now this is a psychological tendency, okay? So right then, you want to feel like everyone else. So what does this say? In order for you to feel like everyone else, it says humans everywhere pursue power, prestige, and status. Now, in order when you bring anything into your mind, you have to take your vision of yourself and then it goes against that. So you read that information. If you read it slow and you thought about that, it's saying all humans everywhere pursue power, right there. Humans everywhere pursue power, prestige, and status. So if I don't do that, I'm against the norm. And what does nature tell us? What's the natural tendency if you don't think about that? It's safety in numbers. That's why you see fish flock together in these large masses. You see birds flock together in the sky. Animals herding. There's safety in numbers. So when you need to be okay and realize what Kipling said. You know, when all others about you are losing their head, keep yours keep your head steady, and all else you'll be a man. Nobody likes Kipling because he said a woman's only a fine cigar is a good smoke, but a woman's only I don't know. He said something very sexist, and that's why no one remembers Kipling. But I mean, this blows my mind. It also is very reconfirming. When I read something like this, it's like it's a reassuring. It's like, oh man, that's nice. Like that means I'm on the right track. And in a world of cause and effect, if you do all this stuff and you have that as a foundation and you operate with that as a foundation, where do you go? But it's like, oh man, I'm having a rough time. Ben Franklin says, read many books. Read often, but read few books. Marcus Aurelius says, oh man, I wish I left it at home. I already read it this morning, so I leave it at home so I don't carry that around. Marcus Aurelius is basically king of the world, right? Roman emperor and stuff like that. He writes in his diaries, and he was never supposed to be published, the Emperor's Handbook. He's like, enough with your books, enough with your sitting and contemplating what like a good man is to be. Just go out and be a good man in every situation. And that's where people think like, oh, it's hard for me not to eat these candies, or it's hard for me because they haven't. It's not hard. It's not hard for a moral man to not sin. If you have made up an idea, and that the idea of who you are and who your morals are, if you've sat there and built that foundation over the years, it's not hard to not eat the candy. It's not hard to not sin because instead of like a gladiator back in the day when you would have to pick up a sword and then go fight a battle, you're merely a boxer. And all you have to do, you carry these virtues with you. All you have to do is clench your fists instead of to pick up the sword to put it down again. You always have those virtues with you, and you're also, if it's who you are, there's no question. Because now, if anything comes across and you're 100% moral, it just defers off. Ding! No, that's not there. Ding! No, that's not there. There's no temptation. There's no decision fatigue. Because if there's a decision, then you know there's a problem. If it comes to a question, right? Like if somebody tries to come and cheat, if a woman comes in here and says whatever she says, at that point, if you have to think, then there's a problem. Because it's not if she says something and you're like, no. The decision, the foundation's already been made. You know, so it's nothing ever gets through that. So it's like for somebody who's a loyal person, they're not going to break that. But we think of people as smart, and we think of them as stupid. We think of them as loyal or unloyal. But what we don't realize is, with every decision, we are made so. So if you, all of a sudden, you can take a doctor or a lawyer, and they decide, make a decision, right? They're a very intelligent, smart person. They built this great law practice. They made a decision to get drunk and get a DUI and run into somebody. Now they got manslaughter and all this. Like, that doesn't mean that person is dumb. They made a bad decision at that time. And that's why God doesn't judge any of us until the end. So we got those options to make some good decisions there. But it's very interesting. I mean, this guy pretty much summed up what I've read for the past like 6 years in one book.
You gave me so much, my mind just,
I know.
it's,
And my mind is too in the past like week, because now this guy has pulled my mind, instead of being up here and using it as a foundation, he brought me back here to go play amongst the foundation. I'm like, this is owned real estate. When I was on a tactical team, we would kick in the door and we would go search the room, and we were then able to move forward. And only once that room was searched, because if a bad guy's in there, right, all of a sudden he's popping out. There's a difference if all of a sudden, you run in, and this is where discretion comes in, and you're hearing active gunshots. You're not going to be like, I'm going to go to the room on the left, I'm going to go to the room on the right, and you can hear it's down there, then you pretty much know. But that's where things get real dangerous, because you don't know if there's a second shooter and all that stuff. But decision will take you there.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's supposed to be owned real estate, something that I don't have to come back here. Your Christian morals are something that is never in question. It's not all of a sudden if somebody says, hey, Steve, you should become Hindu, or I don't know, you should become, somebody like a Muslim. You're not going to be like, well, maybe I should. No, because it's not a question at all. That's a foundation. There's no real estate. There's no, let me tell you about the Muslims though, Steve. Let me just read you one verse from them. You'd be like, get out of here. Like, that is the worst. So like once you have that foundation as a Christian, you're not going anywhere else. When somebody says, hey, why don't you give up your Americanism and come over and be a citizen in our country? You'd be like, I don't think so. I don't think so. There's no question at all. Like, well, let me tell you why China's so much better. I just don't know. I don't think so, man. I'm gonna stay here. But all right, Steve. Oh, I gotta grab that from you though. Oh, I got this. No, this is
Yeah,
mine.
that's yours.